Justin, when we look at the defense, I don't know that there's really much to be concerned with there. They had one long field goal drive in the first half, and that was it. Then in the second half, they did have 3 productive drives in a row, meaning the touchdown, the field goal, the missed field goal after a 60-yard drive. So they did move the ball for 3 consecutive drives pretty effectively, but nothing too explosive. And then the Wolverines put the clamps on it after that. And you can't expect a defense to hold a team to 3 points for an entire football game.
Yeah, I think Josh Gattis better buy Mike McDonald a nice steak dinner after Saturday, because he saved his ass, quite honestly. This defense kept them in the ball game all day. You only gave up 13 points to a team that scored 70, just a couple weeks ago. And I don't care who you play. If you can score 70 points, that means you can move the ball. Noah Vedral has been pretty solid, and he did it again on Saturday. And so he's dynamic. They ran that read option, and Noah Vedral kept it quite often and was okay. But I thought that Saturday's performance by this defense was about as descriptive of a bend but don't break defense as you can get. They let some things happen, but by the time Rutgers got into the red zone, that's when they put the clamps on and they held them to a field goal. One of them even they missed, that type of thing. They ran a really, really good play call for that touchdown pass where it was an RPO. The linebacker bit on the running back, and then he had another RB streaking down the field. But I think that when you're looking at what happened throughout this game, they put the clamps on them in the first half. Everything was going well. Then Michigan goes 3 and out, 4 straight drives. That defense is on the field constantly. Chris Hinton is 300-some pounds and played 53 snaps. Guess what? At some point, you're going to get shoved around if you have your guys on the field for that long. And so I don't want to put this blame on the defense at all, because they did save it by the end of it. And so I thought the other part of that is Josh Ross in the fourth quarter was out with a stinger. You have Junior Colson, who's a freshman linebacker. You have Nakai Hill-Green, who's a redshirt freshman, I believe. I think they're both redshirt freshmen, if I'm correct there. But you have 2 very young linebackers that are leading your defense there. Josh Ross is a 5th-year senior that doesn't, he comes out of the game. That's your quarterback of the defense, right? And so those were to be expected of things that were going on in the fourth quarter there. But I thought this defense did fantastic, honestly.
Yeah, you beat me to the punch there, because to give further context to it, yes, they gave up 3 consecutive would-be scoring drives. The third one was a missed field goal, but preceding all those drives, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, with 0, -1, 7, and 5 yards gained. Like 5 yards gained over the course of 4 drives. That's a pretty long stretch of the football game with the inability to do anything.
Yeah, and then, you have to think about the mental part of that too. Your defense, your offense is getting beat down. Your defense is now has to come back on the field every 5 minutes, essentially. And it's like, oh my God, we got to keep doing this. We got to keep doing this. And now all of a sudden, they keep, Rutgers has some really good plays. They start racking them up. And then all of a sudden it's like, crap, this is a game, and we've got to figure it out. So totally. I think that, I think they this defense played really well. This defense is by far, I think, the strength of this football team, all in all. The offense shows some shine and some spurts of greatness. But when you look at, the 4 games in total, this defense has stepped up in pretty much every single one of those 4 games.
Folks, please like the video, share the video out on social media, and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. We got Justin Rowe on the line, as we do each and every week, from Blue by 90 podcast. Check out his podcast right there covering Michigan football. Good stuff. You get an extension, obviously, of what you get here and a whole lot more. All right, looking ahead to Wisconsin, we mentioned off the top, it's understandable why Wisconsin would be a favorite, or it would be a pick'em game, regardless of the records. Throughout the records, yeah, Wisconsin played Penn State, they played Notre Dame, they played 2 roughly top 10 teams in the nation, and it didn't go well in the fourth quarter against Notre Dame. 6 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, giving up about 280 yards of total offense. isn't necessarily a team that usually loses 41-13 that gives up 41 points. The defense did not give up 41 points. 2 pick sixes in the last 2.5 minutes of the game, a 96-yard kickoff return on the special teams, repeatedly having to play in their own red zone because Graham Mertz threw 4 picks. I watched this game until it got out of hand with about 5 minutes left. It was not a 41-13 game. It was a slugfest between 2 really good teams that hit and have elite defenses, but one of them just took care of the football.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people that are going to look at this matchup. All right, 4-0 Michigan, who has beat everybody, pretty handily except for that second half last week, and then a 1-2 Wisconsin, who got, their rocks kicked off the last week. But this is going to be a close matchup for sure. Michigan's offense is not going to be able to do whatever they want on Saturday against Wisconsin's defense. I think that defense is still a top 15, top 10 maybe defense in the country. They're very, very good. And you can't expect to have the turnovers and the kick returns. That doesn't happen, often. And so even if Graham Mertz doesn't play well, to expect, pick sixes and 96-yard kick returns would be crazy. So I think this is going to be a very, very close game. I think what Michigan's going to have to do is this defense is going to have to take advantage of Graham Mertz's mistakes. They're going to have to send Aiden Hutchinson and some of these linebackers after Mertz, get him uncomfortable, all that stuff. Don't let him get in a rhythm because the weird thing is for this Wisconsin offense, I can't remember what it was, but they passed it a lot more than they did running the ball, which I would love to know the stat of how many times over the past 15, 20 years that Wisconsin has thrown the ball more than they've run it. But they don't have that Jonathan Taylor guy anymore. They don't have a Heisman-type running back. And so they have to utilize Graham Mertz. And for whatever reason, Graham Mertz early 2020 was incredible. He was on a roll. That guy is no longer at the helm of Wisconsin. And so it's going to be interesting to see what Michigan does on the defensive side to get Graham Mertz uncomfortable. But I could see this being a pretty low-scoring game, if I'm being honest.
Notre Dame churns out as many NFL offensive linemen as anyone. So their offensive line isn't quite as good as it's typically been, but it's still, I'm sure these guys are going to develop into really good players. They're having some issues up front. So it's partially Notre Dame, but it's also Wisconsin. Kyron Williams is a top 10 running back in the nation, 18 carries, 33 yards against Wisconsin, 1.8 per carry. They gained 9 yards rushing. And then you would think, okay, well, they threw for 350. They threw for 239, 6.5 yards per attempt. They were okay through the air, nothing phenomenal. So again, I watched this game and Wisconsin they turned the ball over and had a special teams gaffe is what they did. They threw at 41. They ran at 29. Ches Malusi, 18 carries, 54 yards. He's a transfer in from Clemson. He's a good back. He was highly recruited, but they don't have Jonathan Taylor, let alone like waves of running backs like they did 10 years ago with James White and Monte Ball and like 3 of them back there. They are missing that, and they got to figure some things out on offense because, the Graham Mertz slump is pretty extended at this point. It's like a 7 or 8 game slump at this point.
Yeah, but I think you have to take into effect, what you just said about Notre Dame, and then their 2 losses are to Penn State, who's now ranked 4th in the country, and Notre Dame, I think, did they sneak into the top 10? I can't remember. Maybe they're 12 or something like that. But those are not, bad football teams, obviously. So their 2 losses are to very good football teams. Now, and so you have them being, and that Penn State game was very, very close. Until the turnovers, until the kick return, this was a very close game as well. And so they've played with really good football teams. So I don't want to take away from what Wisconsin could do in this game against Michigan. I think if they play a clean game, don't make mistakes, things like that, this could actually go in Wisconsin's favor pretty heavily. Now on the other side, Michigan is still without a turnover on the year, so they don't make mistakes either. So it might come down to neither team is really moving the ball. It's a defensive battle, but one team ends up, with a fumble or with a pick six or something that ends up deciding this game. But, I think that it's kind of funny that we're looking at these two teams where Wisconsin doesn't have those they've never had those star guys except for at the running back position, right? But Michigan doesn't have now star guys except for at the running back position either on the offensive side. And so it's going to be who comes out and has their career day, I think, is going to be how this game pans out.
And as Michigan fans are aware, these two teams have been trading haymakers home and home pretty much until last season, and Wisconsin broke the trend coming to Ann Arbor 49-11. But besides that, there have been some rough trips to Camp Randall. But of course, Michigan has held their own in the Big House going back to 2015.